Joe, will you share with us your experience, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Elena. And do you have a presentation there? I put a quick presentation together. I'm not sure if people can see it. I'm not sure if Yarrow or Mr. Amarzano is there. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So basically, I'm going to answer the big question on the table, which is whether Ukraine can become an agricultural superpower, breadbasket to the world. And there's absolutely no doubt, as we've heard from the earlier speakers, that it can. The real question is, and I come out in favor of the same as the IMF, the same as the IFC. I think it's actually fundamentally important that land reform take place. I think we've heard that a little bit. I think there's some different views, and I appreciate as a producer, Daniel was saying that you don't really need it, and I understand that. But I think if you're going to transform the sector in a way that makes sense, and if you're going to try and attract the kind of capital you need to transform the sector, that you're going to need to have land reform for both locals and foreigners. If you go to the next slide. The good news is that the global context favors Ukraine today. We all live in a very uncertain world, and more investors are looking for real assets. Farmland prices in Ukraine, as we'll see in a second, are very competitive, or I expect they would be competitive if the land market were open for investment. The principal competitors, if you look at Argentina and Brazil, we'll talk about that as well. They've closed their countries to foreign investment in farmland. And finally, as we heard earlier, advances in agrotechnology make large-scale farming more feasible, and it sounds like that Ukraine has a competitive advantage here as well. If we go to the next slide. Now, it's funny, the farmland investment as an asset class is not very well understood in my view. Basically, I would argue that farmland investment is the best real asset one can own. And the reason being is it's gold with a coupon. And as a result, given the certainty with which, or the relative lack of risk and the good store of value, when you buy farmland, you're generally buying it at a pretty low cap rate, no matter where you are in the world, of 3 to 4%. And again, I think that reflects the attractiveness of owning farmland as a real asset. In that heyday in Argentina and Brazil, when you had hyperinflation, how do you protect yourself? Well, everybody bought farmland and ultimately did very well and were able to preserve value. I'm very concerned about the global financial context, not just in Ukraine, but across the world. And as I say, the one thing that we've seen when financial markets come undone is that farmland holds its value. So I do think it's a terrific real asset. And the other big secret about farmland, it has built-in capital appreciation. And you'll see this very clearly from the next slide. If you go to that next slide, you see farms are factories that produce more every year. This is basically a chart of global grain production across the world from 1950 to 2012. And you can see there's been a dramatic increase from about 600 million tons to 2.2 billion tons of grain across the world. That increase in production has been achieved with about the same level of arable land. There's been little or no change in the arable land. All of that increase has come from increased productivity. And so at the end of the day, what happens is a farmland owner is a partner with Monsanto and Syngenta as they produce new and better seeds. They're partners with John Deere as they produce better tractors, and so on and so forth. So effectively, if you look at that same time frame, the world population's gone from 2 billion to 7 billion. The only way we've been able to feed that increasing population is through increased productivity. And the benefit of that increased productivity comes to farm owners. So I like to think of farms as factories that increase their productivity every year, increase their production every year. Let's go to the next slide. And why are we talking about farmland in Ukraine? They have the best soils in the world. And they have the best natural resource, unparalleled. Probably Argentina and Ukraine are about the same, but with 25% of the world's black soil, Ukraine probably gets the nod. They have been the breadbasket of the world and can be very easily again. Right now, my European farmers tell me, and I'm sure Mr. Swery can comment on this, people are getting 8 tons of grain yields, but they're clearly capable of achieving almost twice that if well farmed. And I think that's another reason to bring in foreign land ownership, because I think it'll raise the technological capability of the farming sector. People will benefit from it, and you can create ancillary industries from it as well. We go to the next slide, and we've heard about this again already. Why is Ukraine not really the breadbasket it could be, the super agricultural power it could be? And that's because Ukraine's failed to deliver on reforms. We've talked a lot about that already. There's no need for me to talk about that. Go to the next slide. Basically, again, you'll see we don't have any numbers for Ukraine per se, because there's no land market in Ukraine, as we know. But I would expect Ukraine farmland to trade in the range of Russia, which you see is the low-cost farmland in the world. Again, with, I think, comparable. I think Ukraine farmland is better. I guess the other indicator, my understanding, is rents are at $50 a hectare. That's obviously very, very cheap, and that translates into, again, $800 to $1,000 a hectare of farmland. So at these prices, you know, Ukraine's a gift. And again, let me just go to the next slide. I think we're in a good shape. Ukraine's in a very favorable position right now, because you can't buy foreigners can't buy farmland in Argentina or Brazil today. Both are talking about reinstating. You used to be, when I was buying farmland, I used to be able to buy farmland in Argentina and Brazil. We did very, very well with the purchase of farmland that we made. But right now they closed purchase of farmland in Brazil and Argentina. And ultimately, I think that provides Ukraine with a real opportunity. I think if the Ukraine can take bold action, they have an opportunity to raise billions and billions and billions of dollars for the country. But it's got to be bold action. It's particularly in light of the fact, you know, that people have been there for so long without any real success. Next slide. If we go to the next slide, you see the opportunity is clear. This is from my European farmer. He says, if we can lease land today, in today's difficult times, and convert that land into ownership in 2 years' time, the uplift in land value will be staggering. That's very clear. You can buy Ukrainian farmland at $1,000 a hectare, and there's a real land market. There's no reason to think that investors can't make 5 and 10 times their money. This has been the experience in Poland, Romania, and I think, given that experience, investment can come in much more quickly. So basically, what Ukraine needs to do is put in rules-based investment structure, as we've been talking about, and that allows for domestic and foreign land ownership. If they did, the Ukraine could boom and generate billions of dollars in investment. So if we go to the last slide, the opportunity is there for the taking. The real question is, will Ukraine take it? And I guess I'd summarize by echoing some of the comments made earlier. You know, people have been waiting for a decade for Ukraine. They've been talking about it for a decade, land reform. If Ukraine gets serious about land reform, there's absolutely no doubt that the industry can be transformed. Billions of dollars of investment would come into Ukraine, taking with them not just the capital investment, but cutting-edge technologies that, put together with the terrific tradition of Ukraine farming, the agricultural technological capacity of Ukrainian farming, they could be a real winner. It could be a real core center of growth for the Ukrainian economy, but it all depends, as Mr. Swery was saying earlier, on rules-based investment and structure being put in. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time, the opportunity to speak.